Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Let's understand something. When it comes to Gervonta Davis. I don't do a lot of videos on Gervonta Davis, Terrence Crawford, Boots Ennis, Earl Spence. I know they have some channels that like 90% of their videos, Terrence Crawford. 90% of videos, Gervonta Davis, Earl Spence. I like to talk a little bit about everybody. I may even throw some stuff out here about fighters you've never heard of, you may never ever hear of again. But I talk about what interests me and not just making up a bunch of bullshit. But there has to be something that interests me, right? Now, with Tank Davis, when he had a little up and down with the law, that got my attention. It's like, okay, what's going on with him? But I'm not going to do 50 videos about something negative, right? Unless there's some 50 different interesting aspects to it, then we'll talk about it. But the one thing that keeps popping up, that's why I'm talking about it now, is how Tank Davis, right? People keep saying he's a cherry picker. He's afraid of Devin Haney. He's afraid to fight Shakir Stevenson. Him fighting Frank Martin is a step in the right direction. But my thing is, let's hold our horses for a second, right? For a lot of fighters, once they put the work in and they get the accolades and they get to a certain point in their career, right? Once they achieve certain milestones, fighters no longer care about fighting the top opposition. They want to fight or be in fights where they make the most money. Is that fair to say? It's like I paid my dues, and like we used to say in the military, RHIP, rank has its privileges, right? I got to experience the whole RHIP thing at about, I think at around the 12-year mark, and then at the 18-year mark, then I was off to the races. But I agree with that. Once you put in a certain amount of work, there's certain privileges that come. And in boxing, the privileges are monster paydays. But why would we as boxing fans get mad at Gervonta Davis? Because his team, whether you like it or not, they built him up the right way to where I'll show you something. Go right here. Where for Gervonta Davis, 29 wins, 27 KOs, right? 93% KO ratio. So where he, at 29 fights in, about to be at his 30th fight, right? I would say, let me pull this over here. Maybe around, before he hit his 20th fight, right? Or maybe a little bit, maybe right around his 20th fight, Gervonta Davis started making 8-figure paydays. When you see those guarantees of 3-5 million or whatever, when you take into consideration all the sponsorships, the endorsement deals, ticket sales, live gate, other streams that come from the back end, right? Gervonta Davis has been making the kind of money that a lot of fighters start petitioning for after they put in, a whole lot of work. Now, it's not Gervonta Davis' fault that his team built him up the right way. Now, I understand as fans, they want to see Gervonta come out here and fight everybody at 135. But if you don't expect to see, like right now, well, let's go back. Let's say like for Mayweather, you didn't expect to see Mayweather in the last few years of his career, coming out here and just necessarily fighting every killer that was out there from 147 to 154. But Floyd was still fighting champions. You know what I mean? He fought Canelo. Shit, Floyd was still out here fighting monsters. But he had to make some of those fights to get the paydays that he wanted. Plus, he didn't really have too much of a say because he had signed that contract with Showtime. But the bottom line is Floyd had to keep winning, and he did. But what Floyd has helped navigate Gervonta Davis' career to where he didn't have to, and this is my opinion, put in as much work as what Floyd did to start getting the kind of paydays like what you see Gervonta receiving. Now, when you come here and you really understand this, when people start talking about who's making dough, I don't know exactly when it started, but I think it's going on for about 10 fights now. Let's just say for Gamboa, he was making, let's just say that's where he started making 8 figures. I'm not talking about guarantees. I'm talking about when the dust settled, just how much money he made. Because they'll never tell you just how much money a fighter's getting paid. They be lying their ass off. These fighters over there on Al Heyman and PBC get paid much more money than what they openly share with the public. But you figure Gamboa, so if his Gamboa was an 8 figure, Santa Cruz, 8, Barrios, Cruz, right? That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he got Rolly, Hector Garcia, and Ryan Garcia. So that's like 7 or 8, right? So you figure if all of those were like at least $10 million, you're looking at $80 million right there. Then he fights Ryan Garcia, who knows how much he made. Ryan made 30, Tank had to make like 40, 50. But when you just look at it, and Tank easily probably made in his last 10 fights, before taxes, of course, probably like $120 to $150 million, man. It just depends on just how much, because we're just saying 8 figures, 10 million. He could have made more than that. But really, in his last 10 fights, the man to make that kind of money. And that's mind-blowing. And that's the kind of money that Terrence Crawford is hoping to make in all of his fights right now. And Crawford put in a lot of work, man. He fought a lot of difficult fights. And these guys that Tank's fighting, he's not fighting bums. Like when people come out here and talk about Tank's fighting bums, he's fighting nobodies. Okay, I've done this before. Let's just start right here with Gamboa. You know, of course, Terrence Crawford already got to him. I think Devin Haney had got to him. I can't remember who got to him first, Gamboa, or I think Tank got to him before Haney. But anyway, Gamboa, Santa Cruz. I know people are going to talk about the weights and the ages. Barrios, okay, talk about the weight. Isaac Cruz, oh, he was small, but he's not so small now that he's fighting Pitbull Cruz. Rolly Romero said he was a bum, but Rolly Romero was hurting Tank. He could have knocked Tank out, and Tank realized that Tank is too smart for him. Luis Garcia was a champion, but they say he was small. And Ryan Garcia. And people, even today, still not giving Ryan Garcia any credit. And he's about to fight Devin Haney. So the bottom line is, I don't know if I agree with Tank cherry picking, but I know that they're strategic with who they put him in the ring with. But what I can say is, they are. I don't even want to say they're cherry picking. Well, maybe they are finding a way to cherry pick themselves. Multiples of millions of dollars. Just using their experience building up Floyd and learning from a lot of the mistakes and pitfalls that Floyd encountered. And that's what it's all about. Like with my sons, or even when I had, subordinates and shit like that before I retired, all the mistakes I made, I tried to ensure that they didn't have to go down those paths. I shared my story. I would try to guide them. But some don't listen. Some don't listen, and they go and they encounter, a fail that could have been averted. But then they come back and say, hey, you were right. And they don't make the mistake again. But when you have those kind of fails, it can be quite costly, especially if you experience that due to your stubbornness and shit, you know what I mean? But with Tank's case, I think there was a little bit of stubbornness that they met early on, where he was tweeting negative shit about Floyd Mayweather and talking about Floyd wanted to steal his limelight, steal his shine. And then I think cooler heads prevailed and they got a hold of him and almost had to shake him up and say, young man, shut the fuck up and listen. Listen to what we're telling you. It doesn't make sense to go out here and get in these hard-ass fights, get beat on, when we can put you in a competitive fight, you're more than likely going to win, and you can make, $10, $15 million. You got to work smarter, not harder. The belts mean nothing. And a lot of people don't agree with that. But I kind of agree with that shit. Don't get me wrong, as a boxing fan, it's like, I still want to see him fight these other guys, but I definitely agree. It's just like right now with investing. You go buy homes, real estate, man, very promising investment. Buy yourself a house in 3 years, it builds up equity. Probably in 4 years, probably $100,000 in equity built up in that house. That's not talking about it appreciating, it's just you making payments. Have a renter making payments. But they got this crypto shit too, man. So if people jumped on that Ethereum and Bitcoin a few months ago when they had bottomed out, you could have easily, made yourself, doubled your money with Ethereum and made yourself $50,000, $40,000 to $50,000 off of Bitcoin. So the bottom line is, there are different ways to get to the money. But if I can get to the money in a couple years, opposed to waiting 10 or 15 years, but then I want to do that. And I think that's what they did with Tank, is they really helped him. And they got this new guy coming up, Carmel Motion, whatever his name is. I don't know his name. But people already talking about him. I don't even think he has 4 fights. They're already talking about him. So let's see how they build him up as well. But Tank's an 8-figure guy. He's been an 8-figure guy for a while. Not so sure why that's a problem for people and why they question that. I'll tell you what, when it comes to Leonard Ellerbe, I tend to believe what he says. And, I may be a little biased to him because the guy's an Air Force veteran and shit, but I listen to what he says. And he doesn't strike me as someone who's willing to come out and say something that's totally not true for no reason. He may do his part as a promoter, and with that, sometimes you got to take what he said with a little grain of salt. But when it comes to Tank, how passionately he speaks about Tank and the position that Tank is in, I just find it hard to believe that he will be lying about Tank and how Tank's been making 8 figures for quite some time now. I think if you look at Tank and how much money he's made, I think people will be blown away at just how much he's made, especially in his last 10 fights. Tank could easily be sitting here worth, after taxes and everything, just cash, not assets, just cash. Man can be sitting on $100 million easy. And people out here need to shut up and pay attention and try to understand what he and his team are doing so they can get there too, instead of just hating and being negative. Y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.